Hello and welcome back to video classes by Konnur English Medium School. So far we finished the Heavenly Parasol and the poem Benjamin Jones Goes Swimming. And today we will take up the second prose unit, which is The Boy Who Sold Wisdom. That's right, The Boy Who Sold Wisdom is a beautiful story about an orphaned boy who doesn't have anything to support himself other than his wisdom. So he decides to sell his wisdom. Now you might be wondering, how could anyone sell wisdom? Because wisdom is not some commodity, it's not some object. You cannot weigh it, you cannot sell it the way you sell the things that are physical. So, well, your confusion will be cleared if you read this story, and you will see that this boy finds a way to sell his wisdom actually. So let's get into the story, and as usual I want you to follow line by line and make notes when I explain, when I pause and explain things in between. Nagendra was orphaned and found himself without a job. He was clever and he had learned many things by observing his father. He was orphaned. The boy's name is Nagendra. He was orphaned. What do you mean by orphaning? Orphaned means he lost his parents. He lost his parents at a young age, and he did not have any source of income. He did not have a job. He was clever though. Yes, he was very smart. He was very smart. He was very intelligent. And by observing his father, yes, when his father was alive, Nagendra observed his father, the kind of work he did, and by simply observing his father, he had learned so many things. One day he had a brilliant idea. So now that Nagendra has lost his parents and he does not have a source of income, he does not have a job, he was thinking, what should I do to support myself? He had to earn some money, right, to support himself. So then he had this brilliant idea. What was that idea? He went into town and hired the smallest and cheapest place he could find and set up a shop. He walked straight into a town, and there he chose for himself a small shop, the one he could afford to pay. He did not have a lot of money. So he chose something that he could pay for. Hire, H-I-R-E, hire. Yes, do not confuse that with H-E-A-R here, right? Or H-E-A-R here. H-E-A-R here, H-E-R-E here, and H-I-R-E, hire. These three are different things. So I'll write them on the board. This is hire, and these two are here. They are pronounced the same way, here. And that is hire, hire. Hiring is renting something, yes? So he rented a shop to set up a small business. Where did he do that? He went into a town to choose for himself a small place. So he set up a shop. And he spent, when you set up a shop, you need some merchandise there, right? You need something inside the shop to sell. Well, he bought some pen and ink and paper. He had some coins with him. He had some nickel coins, those are the currency of the olden days, and nickel coins. We don't use them anymore. So he had some coins in his pocket. He used those coins to purchase some paper, ink and pen. Was he really going to sell paper, ink and pen? Well, no, he was not selling paper, ink and pen. His idea was to sell wisdom. That's right. All around him were merchants who had large shops. They sold cloth, jewelry, fruit, vegetables and things that people bought every day. So all around this shop that Nagendra had set up, there were other merchants, and they were all big shops. People who sold cloth, people who sold jewelry, fruits, vegetables. So there were all big shops all around him. Nagendra called out, all kinds of wisdom for sale, reasonable prices. And while people knew that clothes were available in the clothes shop, that vegetables were available in the vegetables shop, and fruits were available in the fruits shop, jewelry, yes, it could be visible from outside, it was visible from outside, and they knew what item was available in which shop. But in his shop, there was nothing. The shop was empty, except this boy standing there holding some paper and pen and ink bottle. So he had to call out to the customers, his prospective customers. He had to make them know what he was going to sell there. So he called out to them. Called out means he just shouted out to them saying, all kinds of wisdom for sale. All kinds of wisdom. All kinds of wisdom. I sell all kinds of wisdom. You can purchase wisdom from me. And what is the cost? I have reasonable prices. Reasonable prices. So when we buy something, we want to buy for reasonable prices. If we think something is expensive, we are not going to buy that. So Nagendra knew this, that he had to attract the customers with the right kind of words. So he used these words. I'm selling wisdom, all kinds of wisdom, and I'm selling this wisdom for reasonable prices. And the people who had come to buy things could not see anything in his shop, but could only hear the words he was shouting. So people had come there to purchase other things like fruits, vegetables, and grocery or clothes. They saw this boy and his shop, and when they saw inside, when they peeked inside his shop, there was nothing else. It was an empty shop, and all they could feel was his voice and the words he was speaking. He was saying, he was shouting, I am selling wisdom and reasonable prices. Other than those words, there was nothing they could find in the shop. The people who had come to buy things could not see anything in his shop, but could only hear the words he was shouting. They crowded around and laughed at him. So they thought, this must be a foolish boy. He is stupid because he's saying he's selling wisdom and he has got nothing in his shop. The shop is empty and he's saying he can sell wisdom. Because any person with some common sense can understand this, that wisdom is not something you sell. It's not sellable. It's not some object or thing to sell. So they all gathered around the shop and they laughed. They made fun of him. No one bought even one piece of wisdom from him, but he was patient. And nobody bought anything from him. They didn't even come and ask him how he sold wisdom and what charges he applied for that. They didn't ask anything because they were very sure, they were very certain that this was some kind of stupid boy who was trying to sell wisdom. So they just laughed and left. But Nagendra knew what he was doing. He was not any stupid boy. He knew what he was doing, so he was patient. He had a lot of patience. He knew that he just had to wait and then things will start happening. Let's see what happens next. One day, Babu, a rich merchant's son, happened to pass by and heard the wisdom seller hawking his wares. Now, there was a rich merchant in the town, and he had a son, and his name was Babu. And Babu was also a boy, and of maybe Nagendra's age. So he was passing by, and he heard Nagendra calling out, wisdom for sale, wisdom of all kinds. And he was a stupid boy. Babu was a stupid boy, not Nagendra. And because Babu was a stupid boy, he thought maybe wisdom was something that he could purchase. So he did not know what was really being sold. He thought it was a vegetable or a thing he could hold in his hand. He had no idea that this boy Nagendra was selling wisdom. And he didn't realize that wisdom cannot be bought and sold. It cannot be held in his hand, right? Like a vegetable. But he thought wisdom must be something interesting. Maybe he could carry it in his hands. So thinking that, he went and asked Nagendra what it would cost per 1 kilogram. So because Babu was stupid, he went to Nagendra and asked him, I want to buy 1 kilogram of wisdom. How much would it cost? Nagendra said, I do not sell wisdom by weight, I sell it by quality. Now, please understand, Nagendra was not trying to fool anybody here by saying that I sell wisdom. He was indeed going to sell wisdom. And here, wisdom is nothing but a piece of advice, some very useful advice, piece of advice. So when Babu went to Nagendra and said, I want to purchase a kilogram of wisdom, Nagendra tells him, well, I do not sell wisdom by its weight, because you cannot do that. You cannot put it on scales and weigh and say this is 1 kilogram and take it. This is not possible. So he tells him very honestly, I do not sell it by weight, I sell it by quality. Quality here in the sense, the usefulness of that piece of advice. If a piece of advice is very useful, then its price is going to be a little higher. If a piece of advice is going to be very, very useful, then of course Nagendra will be charging for it more than the previous one. So this is how Nagendra is planning to sell his wisdom, and you know what? He found his first customer, and his first customer is this rich merchant's stupid son, Babu. So did Babu purchase any wisdom from him? Let's see. Babu put down a nickel and asked Nagendra to give him a nickel's worth of wisdom. So Babu did not know how to buy wisdom because he thought it would be sold by weight, but Nagendra said it wouldn't be sold by weight, it would be sold by quality, its quality. So Babu simply said, well, I have got this nickel. Yes, nickel is a small amount of money. Yes, it's a coin. He put it down on Nagendra's hand and said, well, take this coin and give me whatever wisdom is worth this nickel. Yes, give me a nickel's worth of wisdom. And let's see what happens. The boy took out a piece of paper and wrote on it, it is not wise to stand and watch two people fighting. He asked Babu to keep it tied in his turban cloth. So after receiving a nickel from Babu, Nagendra took out a piece of paper. You see, that's why he had purchased paper, ink bottle and a pen. Now on a small piece of paper, Nagendra writes these words. Yes, pay attention to these words. What are those words? It is not wise to stand and watch two people fighting. These are the words. So it means do not stand and watch when two people are fighting. It's not a good idea to watch two people fighting. That's a piece of advice. That's a piece of wisdom that Nagendra sold to this boy. And he asked this boy, yes, to keep it safe. So he asked him to keep it in his turban. What is turban? Turban is the peta, yes. So even in those days it was common for people, even for boys, to wear turban over their heads. So Babu had a turban on his head, and Nagendra asks him to safely keep that piece of advice in his turban, right? So Nagendra's intentions are pretty good here. He is a genuine merchant, and he is not trying to fool anybody. He gave him a piece of advice to his customer, and he also advised him to keep it safely. Right? Babu went home and showed his father what he had bought. Now for Babu this was something interesting, because maybe he had purchased some candies or ice cream, such other things, but he had never purchased something called wisdom. So he was excited. He thought his father would be very impressed. So he goes to his father, and remember, his father is a rich merchant of the town. He said, I bought some wisdom for a nickel and I have it here, tied up inside this turban cloth. The father untied the knot, looked at the scrap of paper and read what was written on it. It is not wise to stand and watch two people fighting. So Babu's father opens that turban, and then he removes that piece of paper from inside the turban and spreads it, and sees that the words written on the paper, those words were, do not stand and watch two people fighting. He was furious. Babu's father was furious. Furious, what is furious? Furious means very angry. Why was he angry? He screamed at his son, "You fool, paying a nickel for this nonsense?" See, even though nickel was a small amount of money, in those days it wasn't really small, yes? It was worth a lot of things. So, even though he's a rich merchant, he does not want his son to spend money on such nonsense. It is nonsense to him, because standing and watching two people fight is a bad thing. Maybe everybody knows that. Maybe he knew that too, his father, Babu's father. So he's thinking, why did my son purchase something which is such a, it's common sense. He paid a nickel for this. So he's very angry at his son for wasting a nickel on something like that. Everyone knows you should not stand and watch two people fighting. He says, well, you don't know this? Everybody knows that you should not stand and watch two people fighting. So for this common thing, this common knowledge, did you pay a nickel? So that is why he was very angry. Then he went to the marketplace and stormed into Nagendra's shop and scolded him soundly. And he did not stop at that. He did not stop at only after shouting at his son. He had to shout at Nagendra too now. So he rushes to the market and finds Nagendra's shop, rushes into the shop, and then he scolds Nagendra. He shouts at Nagendra. And what words does he use there? See them. You scoundrel! You have cheated my son. He is a fool and you are a cheat. Return the nickel or else I'll call the police. He goes to the shop and then he says, you scoundrel. Scoundrel is an abusive word. So usually people who cheat, people who are dishonest are called this name, scoundrel. So he says, you are a cheater. My son is stupid, I know that. And because he is stupid, you have cheated him into paying money to you. So if you do not return that nickel to me right now, I will have you arrested by the police. I will bring the police here. Threatens Babu's father, that rich merchant, threatens Nagendra. Nagendra was afraid? No. See, if you don't want my goods, you can return it. Give me back my wisdom and you can have your money back. Nagendra says, alright, if you're not happy with what I sold your son, then fine, we can cancel this deal, we can cancel this purchase, this transaction. So you give me back my wisdom, then I will give you back your nickel, says Nagendra. That's fair enough, that's fair enough. Gupta, the merchant, threw the scrap of paper at the boy and said, there, now give me my money back. Nagendra said, no, you've not given me back my wisdom. So Babu's father was carrying that piece of paper with him when he went to the market. So when Nagendra says, give me my wisdom back, I will give you your money back. So he throws the paper down in front of him. Who? The merchant, rich merchant, Babu's father, throws the piece of paper in front of Nagendra and says, there, take, that's your wisdom, yes? Whatever you said, that's back to you now, give me my money back. Did Nagendra agree? No, he didn't. He says, no, you have not given me back my wisdom. You have only returned the paper. If you want your money back, you will have to sign a document saying that your son will never use my advice and that he will always stand and watch people fighting. He says, well, you gave me this paper, but the wisdom has already passed. It's the advice that I had given is with your son now. So that means he can use it anywhere. That means if two people are fighting, he will not stand and watch it because I have told him so, that he should not stand and watch when two people are fighting. So what assurance is there for me that after I return your nickel, your money to you, that your son will not use my advice? If he continues to use my advice, then that means I have sold him some wisdom for no cost, free. I'm not going to do that. So I want you to sign a paper, a document. So Nagendra is saying these words to Babu's father, the rich merchant. He's saying, sign a contract saying that your son will not use the piece of advice I have given him. That means if he is passing by in a place where two people are quarreling, fighting, he should stand there and watch them. If he does not do that, that means he is following my advice. He is using whatever I sold him. Can you sign a paper? Can you sign a document saying that your son will not use the piece of advice I gave him? The passers-by supported Nagendra. So Gupta readily signed the document and took his money. Well, by now there were many people who had assembled there. You know, people love when two people are arguing. That's exactly the point here, yes? People love to stand and watch when people are fighting or arguing, when there is a heated conversation going on. So a conversation was going on between Gupta, the rich merchant, Babu's father, and Nagendra. So people had assembled there and they all supported Nagendra. They said, yes, the boy is right. If he sold something to your son, a piece of advice as he says it, well, your son cannot use it anymore if you want the money back. So you better sign a paper agreeing that your son will not use that piece of advice. Babu's father, Gupta, said, fine, I will do that. So he signed a contract saying his son will not use the piece of advice. And Nagendra gave him his money back. It's that simple. The transaction is cancelled, the deal is cancelled. Gupta was happy that it had been easy to undo his son's foolish bargain. And Gupta was very happy that he got the nickel back and was able to undo, cancel or reverse the stupid deal that his stupid son had made. So he was very happy that his stupid son's deal had been cancelled so easily without much effort. Then a few days passed. The king of that land had two queens. Now you see the story takes different twists, yes? It becomes more and more interesting. Now a few days passed and the king of that land, he had two queens. And those two queens hated each other. They did not like each other. So did their maids. So did their servants. So one queen hated the other queen, and she hated her back equally. And their servants also fought with each other. Yes. So each queen's servant took sides, her side. So that means not only the queens fought, not only the queens hated each other, their team of servants hated each other too. So such was the situation in the royal palace. They quarreled as bitterly as their mistresses. One day, each queen sent her maid to the market. So just the way queens fought with each other, their servants also fought with each other. Yes, that's the situation. So one day, each queen called one of her maids. M-A-I-D, maid means a lady servant. So called one of her maids and sent them to market. The maids went to the same shop and both wanted to buy the same pumpkin. So each queen has told her maid to buy a pumpkin in the market. So both maids went to the market and they both went to the same shop. And there was only one pumpkin left, and they both wanted the same pumpkin. Maybe there were other shops that sold pumpkins, but no, they both wanted the same pumpkin in that shop. So there is a problem now, and neither of them is going to step back because they want to prove that they are better than the other. One wants to prove that she is better than the other. So in that situation, what happens? Well, there was only one pumpkin and they began to fight, they began to quarrel. Their abuses and gestures were so fierce that the grocer fled the place. Not only did they start quarreling, they also came to punches. They started hitting each other, they started screaming and shouting at each other. They started using abusive words at each other. And the merchant, the man who owned that shop, who was sitting there and watching all this, he was scared because he knew that these two were maids of the queens, and it was never a good idea to sit there and watch them fighting, because he could be made witness to that fight. So he said, whatever happens, I don't want to sit here. And he ran away. Fled in the sense, he ran away from that place. But Babu, who happened to be nearby, remembered his father's contract with Nagendra and went there to watch the quarrel. But this poor boy, Babu, Gupta's son, he knew that his father had signed a contract with Nagendra, saying that Babu will stand and watch when two people were fighting. And that's what is happening now. Two people are fighting. Two maids of the queens are fighting. So Babu decided to go and watch it, to respect that contract. He had to stand and watch them. Well, what happens in this quarrel? What happens to Babu is something interesting, and we will see that in the next class.